So something really big just happened in the world of cancer research. At a major medical symposium, some new data dropped that got everyone talking. And it's about pancreatic cancer, which, as you know, is one of the absolute toughest fights out there. But a new drug might be about to change the entire story.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get real about the challenges of this disease. Then, we'll dive into the incredible new survival numbers. After that, we'll unpack how this drug actually pulls it off. We'll also see who it seems to work best for. And finally, we'll talk about what this could all mean for the future.
All right, so to really get why this news is such a huge deal, you gotta understand what researchers have been up against for decades. It's a steep, steep climb.
Yeah, we're talking about a cancer that is just notoriously aggressive. Once it spreads or metastasizes, it becomes one of the hardest things to treat in all of medicine. Progress has been measured in inches, not miles, for a very long time. And this number, wow, this says it all, doesn't it? Before this new trial, this was the reality. With standard treatment, only 2.6% of people, that's fewer than 3 out of 100 patients, were still alive 2 years after their diagnosis. It's just a heartbreaking statistic. But now let's get to the reason for all the excitement. These results come from a clinical trial for a new drug, and frankly, they're turning heads for all the right reasons. You know, in this field, extending life by just a few weeks is considered a win. So when a number like 5-fold increase gets thrown around, everybody stops and listens. But a 5-fold increase of what? Well, this table shows you exactly. Let's walk through it. Median survival, it jumped by almost 3 whole months. The 1-year survival rate, it literally doubled. But look at that bottom line. That's the one. The 2-year survival rate went from that awful 2.6% all the way up to 12.9%. That's the 5 times jump. Just an unbelievable leap. So let's put it another way. For the patients getting this new drug, Elraglusib, on top of their chemo, their overall risk of dying was cut by 38%. That is just a massive, massive step forward.
Okay, so the obvious question is, how? How is one drug making such a huge difference? Well, it turns out it has this really clever 2-pronged attack that gets right at the cancer's main defenses.
It all comes down to this one enzyme, GSK3 beta. Think of it like a master switch that the cancer cell learns how to flip on. And this one switch controls 3 of its deadliest tricks. First, it helps the cancer resist chemotherapy. Second, it basically puts up a do not disturb sign for the immune system, telling it to go away. And third, it actively helps the tumor grow. It's like the cancer's ultimate multi-tool for survival. And Elraglusib is what we call a first-in-class drug. That just means it's the very first medicine ever designed to go in and flip that master switch back off. And by doing that, it unleashes a powerful counterattack. And here's that beautiful 2-pronged attack. First, by flipping the switch off, the cancer cells suddenly become vulnerable to chemo again. The chemo can now do its job. And second, it rips down that do not disturb sign. It basically takes the brakes off the immune system, letting your own body finally see the cancer and go on the attack.
And this isn't just a theory, you know. The researchers proved it. They looked at tumor samples from the patients and saw it with their own eyes. The good guys, the cancer-killing T cells, their numbers went up. And the bad guys, the cells that were suppressing the immune system, their numbers went down. It just completely flips the script on the tumor's defenses. So the top-line results are incredible, for sure. But science is all about the details, right? So the researchers dug a little deeper to figure out if some patients were benefiting even more than others. And that's always the million-dollar question in these trials. Can we start to figure out who's going to respond the best? Can we make our treatments even smarter? And the answer they found was so interesting. The drug worked really well pretty much across the board. I mean, even in patients who usually have the absolute worst outcomes, like those where the cancer has spread to the liver. But they did find a small group, people with a specific trio of gene mutations, where it didn't work as well. And that's a super important clue for future research. But check this out. Maybe the most exciting part of this deep dive was a clue they found in the patient's blood. Something that could be a signpost, telling us who's going to have a fantastic response. They discovered that patients who had high levels of a protein called CXCL2 did even better on the drug. And it makes total sense. If the drug works by unleashing your immune system, it's a huge advantage if you already have a lot of this protein that helps call those immune cells into the fight. This could be a game changer for personalizing treatment down the road.
Okay, so you take all of this data, all these clues, and you put it all together, and it points to the biggest, most hopeful idea of all, the real possibility of long-term survival. You hear oncologists talk about the tail of the curve. When you look at a survival graph, you don't want it to drop to zero. You want it to level out to form a tail. That tail is everything. It represents the people who are living long-term with their disease. And for the first time, we are seeing a real, meaningful tail on the curve for this cancer.
And remember, this isn't just numbers on a chart. At the time of this analysis, 17 actual people on this trial were still alive, still on treatment, some for more than 2 years. This is what shifts the whole conversation from just buying a few more months to maybe, just maybe, living with and managing this disease.
So, what's next? Well, things are moving, and they are moving fast. The company is already talking to regulators like the FDA. The hope is to get this drug approved as quickly as possible and create a totally new standard of care for people all over the world.
And all this leaves us with one final, powerful thought. For so long, a diagnosis of metastatic pancreatic cancer felt like a death sentence. But could this be it? Could this be the breakthrough that starts to turn this terrible disease into something different, something manageable, something you can live with? For the first time in a long time, there's real reason for hope.